Hi folks, so this is the inaugural weekly update video. I've been doing these as a community post for the last 2 or 3 months, and I thought I'd try doing them as a video instead. So we'll try that for a while and see how we get on. I've stolen this idea shamelessly from Mike's book reviews. I don't know if you're familiar with that channel. He mostly does fantasy with a sprinkling of horror and science fiction thrown in. I'll put a link to his channel in the description. If you're not familiar, you can go and have a look, check it out. So first up, we're going to do just a brief channel update. So subscriptions, at the time of recording this on Friday afternoon, it's at 2254. So that's 37 up on the week from last week, so that's awesome. If you're a new subscriber, then welcome to the channel. I really appreciate you subscribing, and I hope you stick around and tell all your friends, why don't you? So this week on the channel there were 3 videos. So on Sunday was the latest installment of the space opera series covering the 1970s. You know, honestly, it was a little bit disappointing. It didn't have as many views as I'd hoped it would. It was maybe a third or a quarter even of the 60s episodes. I'm not really sure why that is. If the 1970s is just less interesting to people, or if the thumbnail was bad, or what, I don't really know. If you haven't seen it, go and have a look. This week on Tuesday there was a book haul which covered some hardbacks that I bought back in December before my self-imposed book buying moratorium. So that was some pretty interesting books in that. Again, if you haven't seen it, you should go and take a look. And just yesterday there was a look at some of my reading plans for the rest of the year, specifically the authors that I want to check off my list of shame, those authors that I haven't read but should have by now. One thing that was really nice about that video is lots of people, I did ask for help and people gave it. There are a lot of comments on that video from people suggesting which book I should read from a given author, or suggesting other books that I might not have that they really recommend that I start with. So that's great. I'm going to use that as a resource to help me choose which books I tackle from those authors as we go through the rest of the year. So in the community posts, I've been doing a comment of the week. So we're going to continue to do that on the video. I think it's quite fun for me to have a look through the comments from the week and decide which one to choose for this. So for this time, I'm going to choose one from Andy Johnson. Thank you, Andy, who commented on the 1970s space opera video, specifically about the book by Frederik Pohl, Gateway. What was interesting about that comment is he referred to the fact that Pohl had a run of success in the 50s, but then was mostly an agent or an editor during the 1960s. So he had a bit of a resurgence in his career in the 70s, a bit like a renaissance, a bit like Matthew McConaughey, kind of disappeared for a while and then came back strong. So that's quite interesting. And he also referred to a memoir that Frederik Pohl published in the late 1970s, which looks back at his career in the history of science fiction. He also mentioned, because he's based in the UK, the Oxford Book Fair, which he went to, where he actually bought a copy of that book, which I hadn't realised existed. So I'm going to look that up and find the next one and see if I can go along, because it's only about half an hour up the road. The other thing that was nice about that comment was it spawned a whole conversation with several people involved about Frederik Pohl and his writing and the memoir. So that was quite cool as well. So thank you, Andy. It's always awesome to have great comments. So what have I been reading? January has been an unusually bumper month. Normally I get through 6 or 7, sometimes 8 books in a month. And I've got my 8th and 9th book of this month on the go already. One in actual copy and one on an audio book that I'm sort of reading in parallel. Greatly helped by me choosing slender books. So these are not chunkers. These have been quite thin, around 200 pages typically. So I finished, I think I was midway through this at this point last week, but I finished this over the weekend, Silverberg's Tower of Glass, which was excellent. So it had his characteristically great writing. He really questions the kind of nature of humanity and the nature of deity as well, which I thought was interesting, as the dwindling number of humans on Earth and a lot more androids, and they are pretty realistic looking people. It's a bit sort of Blade Runner-y in that respect, but I thought it was interesting the way that they had two competing is too strong a word, but 2 different points of view, 2 different factions in the android world. One who were politically agitating for equal rights, and another who were trusting to religion, who had deified their creator, the person that invented the android making process, the CEO of that company. They considered him to be divine. So that was interesting. 2 different kind of different paths that were possible. So that was that. I also finished TZero, which is rock hard science fiction, but with a soft center. So it's like one of your favorite kind of sweet, hard on the outside, soft on the inside. So at its core, I suppose it's hard science fiction. It talks about an interstellar journey. It's quite tight on the relativity and the time dilation and the hard physics of it, which with my long dormant physics degree that I did at university, I appreciated. And some of that was a bit mind-blowing, particularly in the latter half of the book, where he was talking about passing through galaxies in a matter of seconds, or flying through the center of the sun because they were going so quick that matter had no meaning at that speed. So that was interesting. And but I also like the kind of characters in the book and the interplay between them. And there's a really nice kind of study of leadership in the form of the constable, sort of the evolution of his leadership style throughout the story was pretty cool, I thought. So then there were a couple of bonus extra books. I could see that I was wading through my TBR pile pretty quickly, so I added a couple. So I read Christopher Priest's Fugue for a Darkening Island. Man, this is a miserable book. It's interesting. It's a English catastrophe type novel. It's a man-made catastrophe this time, so interesting parallels to today's time. So there's a right-wing populist government. There's out of control immigration, and that's a heady mix. But the immigration's out of control to the extent that it triggers a civil war with factions of the English on the side of the immigrants who want them to settle and to be accepted as citizens of the country, and then the other side who are fearful of the immigrants. And this isn't just the occasional boat, this is millions of immigrants. There's 2 million African immigrants running from the aftermath of a nuclear war in Africa. And we don't really know what caused that, but there's been a nuclear exchange which has destroyed the cities, and people are fleeing for their lives. And it follows a not very likable protagonist, and the book is an unusual style. It's kind of staccato, sprinkling of bits of memories of pre-catastrophe, and then during, and his own kind of musings and thoughts. He's not very, as I say, he's not a very likable lead character. He's weak and kind of venal, out for himself. He leaves his wife because he finds her boring and complaining after the catastrophe, but it is somewhat redeemed at the very end, and I won't go any further. But it's Christopher Priest, so it's beautifully written, very nice book. More on that in a little while. And I also read A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. I read the first one last year. I was keen to read the second. It's quite it's a different book in that the storyline and the plots, such as there was a plot in the last one, is completely different. But it's a nice kind of circular story of an AI helping a girl, and then that girl, having grown up later, helping an AI, and then that AI helping the girl find the original AI. So it's a neat plot circle, and it's I think I said last year I was really surprised by how much I enjoyed A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it that much. I was a bit cynical, old fart going into it, but I was drawn in, and the same thing happened with this one. The writing is good. It's a two-strand plot, so one strand in the past, another strand in the present, and those two gradually get closer and closer together, and they knit together in a nice denouement at the end. I liked it. So what am I reading now? I'm reading the Centaur Device, which is kind of gritty. I'm only about a quarter of the way through, so I haven't drawn a conclusion yet. But it if 1930s, 40s, 50s space opera is kind of clean cut and all American, kind of like the Everly Brothers or something, then this one is more like, it's kind of sweaty and grubby. It's more like the mosh pit at a heavy metal concert. It's quite different in tone, and his writing is very good, is my early observation. However, it is early days. I am finding it's not flowing that well for me, because the prose is quite chewy, so you really have to concentrate. It's not a light read. I don't think so it's not. I mean, it is space opera, but it's not easy spoon-fed space opera. You have to work for it, I think. I'm also reading currently, or listening to, Look to Winward, which I have read before, didn't remember much about it, and I'm still not really remembering much about it as I'm reading it. I'm only about a quarter of the way through, perhaps. So this will keep me going throughout the rest of the month, probably, as I don't listen to it that often, just usually when I'm out running. I find I'm switched off from everything else and I can listen and concentrate. I find if I'm in the house, then audiobooks, either I get distracted by what I'm doing, like if I'm cooking or something, I can't listen to a book, or I find it very soporific and I fall asleep. So when I'm out running, it's pretty good. I haven't got anything else to do, and it's not advisable usually to fall asleep while you're out running in the countryside. So audiobooks work very well for me whilst I'm running. So books that I've bought this week, I haven't bought any books. I've been a good boy still, or a bad boy, depending on your perspective, I suppose. I have said to myself that I won't buy any books in January. When I look back at how many books I bought or acquired during 2023, it's a rather scary number, well in excess of 1,000. I spent quite a lot of my hard-earned money on it as well. So I'm having what will probably end up being a somewhat token pause in the book buying for this month. I am already making plans about what I might do next month from a purchasing point of view. But for this month, I'm on day 12. Day 12 in the Big Brother house. I haven't bought any books. I've thought about buying them, and I've got quite close to buying them. I've hovered over the purchase button, but I have resisted up till now. So I think I'm doing okay. So a quick look ahead on the channel then. On Sunday, there will be a look at the top 10 science fiction books of 2023. That's those published in 2023. According to the users of Goodreads, specifically a poll that they did. It's interesting to look at. I am obviously not very up on what's been published last year because I've only read one of them and I haven't heard any of the others. So I've obviously been head down in the vintage or classic science fiction. So what I'm interested to know is, are there any that I would actually like to read based on the blurb or any reviews that I've read, and I'll share that with you on Sunday. On Tuesday, I'm going to look at 2 English catastrophe books that I've read recently. So that's Shelter by Dave Hutchison and A Fugue for Darkening Island that we just looked at by Christopher Priest. They're very different, but there are comparisons that I think can be made as well as contrasts. So I think I haven't quite decided how I'm going to do that exactly, but that's the idea. We'll see. And then I have a notion to do a deep dive on a short story from time to time. So on Thursday, there'll be a look at a short story. I'm not sure what yet. I'm minded to pick The Jaunt by Stephen King. That was a favourite, and I picked up Skeleton Crew a month or two ago, which prompted that. So I'll give that a reread, and we can talk about it. As for what I'm reading this week, I've still got Centaur Device to finish. I've still got Look to Winward to listen to on my running. And then when I finished the Centaur Device, then the last book on my TBR for January, my TBR that I had going into the month, is The Hercules Text by Jack McDevitt. So that's next. And then I will have no books to read. I mean, I have thousands of books to read, certainly hundreds, but I haven't any that I picked out, so I'll be winging it from that point on. I've got plenty to choose from, an embarrassment of riches really. So I might start making an early dent in the rest of the list of shame, or I might pick something that I acquired recently over Christmas, for example. There are several books that I quite like to read. So that's it. Thank you for watching as always, and until next time, bye for now.